This is a very timely webinar, given that it is almost lunchtime. We are super excited to be having today's conversation and webinar around food therapy. I know a lot of us have been feeling, I myself included, like this COVID diet, I don't know how much of it is just out of, sitting at home and just, eating out of boredom, or if it's just like a stress response. But I know a lot of us have been asking these questions, and a lot of us have, been feeling it. So we couldn't think of anything more timely and topical. And so we're so excited to have Annetta join us. She is actually one of our psychotherapy interns. How are you, Annetta? I think you're still muted. You can take that. There we go. How's it going?
Great. Thanks so much for the introduction, Dr. Sapna.
Of course. Well, thank you so much. I know you've put together an awesome presentation today. And of course, it wouldn't be an Integra webinar or presentation if we didn't have one of our awesome physicians join us. So hello, Dr. Sahib. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good. So I think we all can relate to this. So Annetta, I'm going to let you just jump right in. I'll be navigating if there's any questions, but we'll wait till the end to answer any questions that people might have. And yeah, I'll let you guys take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So welcome, everyone. So this topic seemed very relevant, as Dr. Sapna mentioned, for the current times of social isolation that we are living in. Many of my clients are really struggling with what they label as the quarantine 15. So similar to that freshman 15. So we have a lot more time on our hands and really nowhere to go but the kitchen. So whether you are experiencing boredom or just feeling stressed or anxious, or that sense of COVID cabin fever that was described in a previous Integra webinar, many of us are turning to food to cope with these feelings and really finding ourselves engaging in emotional eating. So feelings of failure or guilt frequently do arise, especially for those who eat more than they think they should and more than their bodies really want. So the idea of eating what you want really feels like an unachievable goal in many people's minds, but it really doesn't have to be this way. And mindful eating has emerged as an alternative practice to help people ensure that they start listening to their internal body cues and to tell them when they're actually feeling full and when they should be eating. So on today's agenda, we have just a brief overview of what mindful eating is and what it's not. And I'll be walking you through 5 steps to mindful eating, and we'll be doing a few practice exercises as well. So if we want to move to the next slide. So Jon Kabat-Zinn actually started the mindfulness practice, and he defined mindfulness as the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So what does this really mean? So it really means that we're often worrying about the future or thinking about the past, but we're not really living in the present moment and tuning into what's happening in the present moment. So that's what mindfulness is. And next slide. So yeah, I invite you all to really reflect on your last meal, and you can use the chat box or write this down in a notepad or on your phone. Think about, what did you eat? Were you present with your food? Did you eat because you were hungry? Or was it because it was time to eat? Like, was it breakfast? Was it dinner? Was it lunchtime? Did you really enjoy what you ate? And how do you feel now? Are you still full? Are you full? Are you still hungry? How are you really feeling right now? So keep this reflection in mind as we go through the next few sections. And I also invite you to actually have a snack or maybe a meal even on hand. I know we're approaching lunchtime here in Toronto. So maybe just something small like a raisin or a nut or a piece of fruit, and just have it on hand as we will be doing some exercises. So next slide, please. So mindful eating. So maybe I'll actually start with describing what it's not. So mindful eating doesn't involve any restrictions. It's not a diet. So for many people, food concerns are related to the possibility of weight gain. Yet research has actually shown that restricted eating does not result in weight loss in the long term. In fact, the vast majority of people who intentionally try to lose weight end up regaining it. So putting restrictions on what you eat really evokes that forbidden fruit feeling and can lead to the development of either binge eating or other eating disorders or just weight gain. So why do we turn to restrictions, diets, and mindless eating rather than mindful eating? Is it just because we don't have the skills? Well, really, it's our way of life as well. So it's not really conducive to mindful eating. So the concerns I often hear are I'm too busy, I barely have time to eat, I'm often multitasking or distracted while eating. Like maybe I'm working, taking care of my kids, eating while standing up. I'm chewing fast because I just don't have time to really savor my meal. So really all these issues and our lifestyle and lead us to end up eating more than we actually need to. So maybe before I describe what mindful eating is, maybe I'll invite Dr. Sohaib just to comment on restrictive eating and what it does to the body.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you guys hear me okay? Perfect. Okay. And so restrictive eating is the practice of obviously restricting either the amount of calories you're eating or the amount of food you're eating. And when we say restrictive eating, we're not talking about, taking a smaller portion size. We're talking about, consistently eating very, very small amounts with the goal to potentially lose weight. Now, obviously over time, if we're talking about uh, developing, if somebody was to continue with that long term, the concern may be something, developing something like an anorexia or those kinds of things. Now, the reason restrictive eating is actually not that helpful is because um, it can actually cause weight gain. And so people, our body likes to stay where it is. It's called homeostasis, fancy way of saying it likes the way it is, which is why yo-yo dieting and stuff like that happens. Because when we make sudden drastic changes to our diet, our body is constantly fighting us saying, no, we were fine. I want to get back to where we were. And so people may lose, 5, 10 pounds with it, with whatever type of diet or means of changes they might have made, but the body's still struggling to get back to where it was, which is why very quickly, even with minor shifts in diet, that sort of thing, it'll go right back to where it was. And again, it's not a healthy way to go about losing weight, right? And so again, I know this talk is not so much about weight loss, but I think I do want to stress the fact that, again, restrictive eating is not a healthy way to go about losing weight. And obviously, if you want to chat about weight loss techniques and that kind of thing after the session, any of our docs, including myself, will be more than happy to do so. I think one of the most important things on this slide is the fact that mindful eating is not a diet, right? It's a practice. And I know Annetta said that. And so really it's about a shift in perspective. I think Dr. Sapna said this, and Annetta mentioned this as well. Many of us turn to food for comfort, stress relief, or to reward ourselves. And when we do, we tend to reach for those junk food, sweets, or other comforting but often unhealthy foods. And what we're doing in that is we're actually trying to fill our emotional needs with food. And you can see how, that's apples and bananas, it's not quite the same thing. And so the same way, you prime yourself for a workout, hopefully this session will teach you to prime yourself before eating. Before workout, people will stretch and say, okay, what feels tight, what feels sore, what should I maybe take it easy on? We don't just get up in the morning and get out of bed and start running, right? That's run to the kitchen or run down the hallway. And so, hopefully we can teach you to eat and teach ourselves, again, remind ourselves to eat with introspection and hopefully relearn some of the joys behind eating.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Sohaib. Exactly. So really kind of slowing down and tuning into those internal cues to distinguish between physical hunger or emotional hunger is really one of the key elements of what mindful eating is. So we often do confuse even signs of hunger with maybe signs of emotion. So just really tuning in and learning how to distinguish what our body is telling us and will let us know, are we hungry? Should we be eating? Or is this something else that we should be tending to, like an emotion? So another aspect of mindful eating is using all 5 senses to really assess our foods. So when's the last time that we really took the time to look at our food? What are we eating? Really taste it. Does it have a nice aroma? The other component is eating slowly and chewing thoroughly. So slowing everything down. So being present and being mindful involves really the act of slowing down to really be in the moment. And that allows you to, again, chew more thoroughly and enjoy your food. So the fourth element is avoiding distractions and investigating your hunger as you eat. So trying as much as possible to really sit down for a meal, not eat while standing, and just focus on the meal itself. And that allows you to assess as you're eating, are you still hungry as you're going through? And then the final step is really the best one. It's savoring your food and enjoying it for what it is. It's a great experience. So something that we can look forward to 3 times per day. So definitely something that we can savor and enjoy and bring that joy back to the food. All right, great. So next slide. So the 5 key steps to mindful eating, or the practices that we'll be going through, are listed here. So practicing breathing and mastering our hunger cues, the sensory assessment of food, slowing down, limiting distractions, and savoring our food. All right. So the first practice that I'd like to share is really around breathing. So mindfulness practice brings a lot of focus on breath. And breathing can really help us slow down and bring attention to the mind and body. So breathing has so many amazing elements, and it does so much for our bodies and our minds. And it's really something that is an easy practice to incorporate into our daily lives. And it can do so much. So it doesn't take a lot of time out of your day. You can do it at your desk. You can do it at home. It doesn't distract people, don't see you really doing it. So our fast-paced lifestyle results not just in mindless eating, but stress and burnout. So that's stress and obesity actually do go together. So if you're stressed and you're eating, what happens is your metabolism actually isn't working and your body is storing fat. So taking a few deep breaths can really help your body relax. So why is this so important? So think about doing this before you're eating. So that added benefit of taking a breath and relaxing your body really relaxes your stomach and allows your metabolism to become engaged. So breathing and scanning your body can also help you tune into those feelings of hunger. So when you're breathing, you're really focusing on your body, and you're really allowing yourself to understand, what am I feeling in my body? Is it hunger? Is it an emotion? So that slowing down with breath allows you to do that body scan. And sometimes, like I said, we have messages or signals from the belly that may mimic hunger. So the same hunger sensations can be confused with anxiety or stress. So that tightness in the stomach can either be anxiety or stress, or it can be hunger. So really trying to distinguish and learn what are those body cues, and how can you tell if that tightness is hunger or is it anxiety or stress? So maybe again, I'll invite Dr. Sohaib just to comment on how breathing or relaxing the body can improve metabolism and fight stress.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, it's about looking in and recognizing, having some introspection, to listen to what your body is saying. And again, it's similar to priming yourself, like I said before, workout. Before you eat, or when you think you feel hungry, to do the mindfulness exercise, which I know we'll get to in a minute, and then listening to your body. And so there's good ways to differentiate emotional hunger from physical hunger, and they each have their characteristics. And so things like emotional hunger tends to come on very suddenly. You'll go, oh, geez, I'm hungry. I need to eat something right now. And emotional hunger feels like it needs to be satisfied instantly. So it comes on very quickly and it needs to be resolved very quickly, right? Oftentimes with emotional hunger, you're craving specific foods, especially comfort foods. And so again, those are things that are often sweet or fatty, or usually not in the most healthy sort of category, right? Oftentimes emotional hunger isn't satisfied even though you're full, right? And so, and everybody's been in the same boat, is, you're eating and you're full, but you want to keep eating, right? And again, it's recognition of that. And lastly, oftentimes emotional eating, not always, but often, can trigger feelings of guilt, of shame, of powerlessness, right? And so those are very common characteristics of emotional eating, as opposed to physical hunger. Oftentimes physical hunger comes on gradually, right? And you can wait, meaning, you can go, okay, is what I'm feeling, hunger, emotional hunger, is it coming on suddenly? Or do I feel like, I could wait before I eat? That tends to be physical hunger. And physical hunger is open to options. Lots of things will sound good. It's not that you have laser vision or eagle eye vision for the bag of chips. You're saying, okay, I could have X, I could have Y, I could have Z, sort of thing. And obviously physical hunger stops when you're full, right? And obviously there's different levels of fullness. Again, having that sense of listening to your body, that you're approaching fullness. And I know we'll touch on this a little bit later on, but again, physical hunger stops when you're full. Your body says, okay, I'm good, I've had enough. And eating to satisfy your physical hunger doesn't make you feel any negative emotion, doesn't make you feel bad about yourself, doesn't make you feel shameful or powerless. So those are a simple set of ways when you do listen to your body, when you do those breathing exercises, to have that introspection that can differentiate between emotional hunger and physical hunger.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So now we're moving into the exercise portion. So I'll guide you through a breathing and a body scan exercise. So I invite you all to find a comfortable seating position and to close your eyes if you'd like and take a few deep breaths with me as I guide you. So take a deep breath in, pause and hold it for a few seconds, and then exhale for a few seconds. Do this a few times, bringing attention to your belly rising and filling up on each inhale, and falling on each exhale. You can even place your hand on your belly as you inhale, feeling it fill up, and feeling it deplete as you exhale. Check in with your belly and let it be full and soft as you breathe in. Expel all the air as you breathe out. Do this a few more times. Now gradually just let your breath become natural. We have now taken a few deep breaths and slowed our system. You can keep your eyes closed and take this moment to scan your body from head to toe. Notice the current state of your body. Are there places of tension or relaxation? If there are places of relaxation, send your breath to those areas. Are there places that feel cool or warm? Are there signs of hunger or signs of satiety? Do you feel your stomach grumbling? As you scan your body, can you name any of your feelings? Are you feeling stressed? Perhaps you're bored. Maybe you're content. When you're ready, allow your eyes to slowly open. Now look at the scale on the screen and really think about how hungry are you? Were you able to identify what your body actually told you? So maybe now I'm just looking for a few comments as we kind of look at this hunger and satisfaction scale. It's really meant to allow you to take a look to see, are you feeling too hungry? Or are you feeling neutral? Are you satisfied? And looking at those descriptors. So for instance, if you're too hungry, you've gotten to the point where you have a headache, you might feel dizzy or nauseous. If you're hungry, you probably have like that growling stomach feeling. Perhaps you're too full, so you're a bit uncomfortable or your stomach feels a bit of pain, maybe even nausea. Um, Sometimes even those feelings of thinking about, is your body feeling too cool or too warm? Maybe you're looking for comfort. So maybe all you were really looking for is just like a blanket. So really allowing yourself to scan your body may help you identify other needs that you need to tune into that aren't necessarily hunger. Maybe just wrapping yourself in a blanket or getting up to stretch a little bit is all you needed, rather than comfort from food. So you can seek and get comfort elsewhere as well, not just from food. So just looking to get maybe some comments in the chat box to see, how did that feel, that exercise? Did you find it to be easy? Was it hard for you? Or even if anyone wants to put in a few numbers around how they're feeling in terms of hunger or satisfaction. Okay, so we're getting some 4s, some 5s, neutral, Okay, a few people that are feeling a bit too full after breakfast. So some people said it was difficult to focus on breathing. Yeah, and the practice of breathing, does take sometimes some uh, just repetition and really doing it a few times per day and learning how to breathe. A lot of us have almost forgotten how to breathe because it just comes naturally, but that allowing yourself to take 3 deep breaths when you do feel like there is some kind of need that is unmet, or some kind of feeling of stress, allows your body to reset. So it is a great practice. Okay, so some people mentioned the exercise helped them concentrate on their posture, which is great. Okay, it brought awareness to your feelings. That's awesome. Yeah, so that's exactly what it's meant to do. So that breathing exercise is meant to bring you more awareness to those internal cues that your body is sending you. So awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in that exercise. So whenever you do feel like you have some kind of urge to eat, maybe even having this hunger and satisfaction scale as a picture in your phone, just to kind of connect to and see, what am I actually feeling? Maybe I can do a bit of a breathing exercise and see, like, am I actually hungry or is this something else? So just a quick little scale to help you out. Yes, and for those of you who are wondering if the webinar will be shared afterwards, yes, we'll definitely be sharing this as a recording as well. Awesome. Great. So next tip is sensory assessment of food. So when's the last time that you really used all your senses to pay attention to your food in front of you? So engaging your senses can really help prevent you from eating on autopilot. So John Kabat-Zinn actually explained how you can use all 5 senses when eating by famously using a raisin as an example. So I definitely encourage you all to just even Google that YouTube video. He actually goes through the process of analyzing a raisin using all 5 senses. So it's pretty interesting. But we can actually do this little practice in session right now. So I have an almond. I invite you all to take whatever you have in front of you in terms of a snack and see if you can follow along as we do this exercise as well. So, ask yourself, does your food actually look appealing? Does it have an aroma? How does it feel to hold it in your hand? I invite you to even take a bite. Does it produce a sound? Maybe crunching, maybe it has no sound. What tastes does it evoke? Is it bitter? Is it salty? Is it sweet? Maybe it's a range of flavors. Do you recognize it as a food, or is it something that's highly processed? Where does it come from? So was the food grown in the earth? Really think about all the aspects of nature that it took to bring this food to life. And now pause and ask yourself, is this something that I really want? I think that last question allows you to really think about, is this a food that I really want to ingest in my body after doing that scan using all 5 senses? And that pause even allows you to determine, maybe I don't actually want this. Maybe it's not something that I like. If it is something that I like, then of course, go ahead and eat it, enjoy it. So maybe even looking for some comments in the chat box. How was that exercise for you? Did you find that it did anything? Perhaps it didn't do anything.
Just to add something real quick.
Sure.
I think this exercise is fantastic because it allows you to, reconnect with the food. And, you kind of alluded to this before, Annetta, where oftentimes we're just eating on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to eat or food is in front of us, and so it goes in our mouth. But this activity, again, allows you to engage all the senses that we have, all 5 of our senses, smell, taste, look, feel, all that sort of stuff, and then the tastes themselves. To again reconnect with the food and really identify is this something we want in our body? Is this something we want right now? Right? And at the same time, it slows down your eating, helps you appreciate the food that you're given, can again give you appreciation for where it came from, what went into making it, all these kinds of things. And obviously, and when you slow down your eating, that's also much healthier for you in general, right? You're not eating to maximum fullness, and you're not going to get to the 8 to 10 on the scale that you just showed us, right?
Exactly. And that, like you mentioned, that slowing down is, an upcoming tip as well, but that ability to actually really appreciate your food and think about where it came from and have that gratitude for your food is something that we probably often forget about. And slowing down and really using your five senses allows you to reconnect with, how amazing food really is. So awesome. So I'm seeing a few comments here around number 8. So is this something I really want, being a really important question that you may want to incorporate into your day-to-day, that this exercise made you feel a bit more aware of what you were eating, which is great. Yeah, that awareness seems to be very common amongst the participants, which is awesome. And yeah, it definitely will help you make better food choices. So I think that's how, if you think about how this is not a diet, but just appreciating your food, slowing down, and really thinking about what you're eating does allow you to, in the end, make better food choices that are both better for your mind and your body and your overall emotions and your mood. So that's awesome. Thank you for participating. So as Dr. Sohaib mentioned, slowing down, very important. So this is the third tip. So slowing down really helps you enjoy your food more fully, but it also helps you become more aware of when you're getting full. So before you really hit that 8 or 9 on that hungry or satisfied scale. So slowing down allows you to pause even halfway through your meal to assess, are you still hungry? So if you are, that's fine, you can continue eating, but often we just continue eating because we have a full plate and we want to finish it. We're not really thinking about, are we full halfway through? So even allowing yourself to incorporate that practice of pausing halfway through to assess your hunger is very helpful. Something unique or interesting is that it really does take 20 minutes for your brain to register that you're full. So most of us have already eaten and forgotten about it in 20 minutes. So if you're not really paying attention and you're going too fast, you will be way too full before your brain fully catches on. So some simple tips to help you slow down is to chew your food completely. Take some smaller bites, maybe even put your fork or spoon down before taking the next bite. Pause and take a breath between bites. Use smaller plates or utensils to promote manageable portions, and maybe even drink water.
So just to,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just to jump in here. The registering fullness is again something that not a lot of people know about, but is so important to know. Because it again helps us eat food in a healthy way, allows us to appreciate our food and to not overeat. And so there's been a lot of research around this, and eating is a very complex task, right? You can imagine chewing, swallowing, body registering, all these kinds of things. There's a lot of things going on at the same time. But I guess to break it down to simple terms, when you eat, stretch receptors in your stomach activate, right, as it fills with food or water and liquid. And then these directly signal the nerve that activates both the gut and the brainstem. And so certain primal parts of your brain that register that fullness, right, that we have, that animals have, all that sort of stuff. And so at the same time, there's hormonal signals that are being registered by our small intestine, which can recognize these hormones and again relay back to the brain that yes, we are filling up, right? There's also hormones released by the fat content of the food. But again, all this intricate hormonal crosstalk takes time to develop. And by eating too quickly, a lot of times we don't give our body that chance to get those signals. And so on average, you're looking at 15 to 20 minutes before those signals are really firing at their max, right? That they're really at their peak. And so that's why it's so important to slow down, to be mindful of what you're eating. And on that note, water, obviously, very, very healthy thing to be drinking throughout the day. And I know people are more so at home and they're not being as physically active. And so as a general rule, making sure you do have enough water in your system is very important. And I'm sure for everyone, the bathroom's not too far away these days, right? And lastly, there's actually a lot of really good evidence to say eating meals with others, being social, really, really good evidence for long-term health. And so if anyone's ever looked at the Mediterranean diet, and I'm not suggesting that is the best diet or anything like that, but there's been a lot of research looking into being social when eating. And obviously that helps you slow down as well, because you put your spoon or fork down in between, you chat, and that gives your body a chance to play catch up, right? In terms of those hormonal or body signals. And so something like the Mediterranean diet is actually, one of the pillars of it is eating when you can, socially, because again, really, really good long-term benefits. And that's based on a lot of studies to say when you eat socially, you have better weight control, you have better heart outcomes, better mood outcomes, all these kinds of things. So just stuff to keep in mind.
And I think there was a question in the chat. Perhaps you can comment, Dr. Sahabi, around is it recommended to drink water during meal, or is it actually better to do it before or after?
To be honest, there isn't any definitive. It's a really great question, actually. I get it asked all the time. There isn't any definitive answer as to what is better, right? I mean, as a general rule, if you are drinking water prior to or during your meal, I personally think that's better, because you're allowing your body to take the time to register that fullness. Like I said, when food or liquid goes into the belly, those stretch receptors are activated, right? And those take time for our body to register. You can imagine somebody who eats a full meal and then drinks a whole lot of water right at the end, right? That can go a long way towards going onto that 8 to 10 mark on the scale we saw, going from, oh yeah, I'm adequately full, to, whoa, now I'm really full, right? And that's obviously going to be much more likely the case if you're talking about something that's not water. If something's carbonated or high in sugar, then that's going to go even further in terms of making you feel that that sensation of fullness, or maybe guilt around eating. And so as a general rule, I would say take your time. When you're taking your time, having the water before and during is probably a better general rule than just having a lot of liquids right at the end, because again, that's going to trick your body a little bit at the end to stretch a little bit more, and that's going to take time for you to realize.
Awesome. And then I guess one more question I even had is around chewing your food completely. I think there's a degree of even maybe your nutrients being processed by your body better if you are chewing your food more completely. Is that correct?
So yeah, I mean, it boils down to several things. Again, very, very good question. And so as a general rule, we don't chew enough, just because we're just eating on autopilot, right? And so being mindful of chewing, and some people say, chew 20 times before you swallow. Some people say more than that. Again, there's no definitive answer, but certainly chewing to the point that, first of all, eating manageable portions, right? So you're not to the point where you're chewing and you can't breathe, right? And so you want to be chewing manageable portions. You want to chew, again, at least 20 times, to the point where the food is very finely minced and the ability to swallow is going to be much easier, right? And then the actual digestion of that food is not going to take as long, because again, it's already starting to break down. And so the breakdown in the stomach, again, won't take as long. And if you're eating large chunks of food, you're eating very quickly, you can imagine that's going to contribute to a lot more stretching, a lot more fullness, that can persist for much longer afterwards, and again, make you feel kind of that shame, that guilt, that feeling that I overate.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so the fourth tip involves avoiding distractions and multitasking while eating. So in our busy lives, like I said, we're often eating while doing something else, whether it's working, watching TV, maybe we're even on our phones. The good news is that we all have a lot more time to practice this now. So becoming aware of your distractions and bringing your attention back to eating is something we can all practice during this pandemic. So if you are not distracted, again, you can assess if you are still hungry or not. So the interesting thing is that when people start to really taste their food and pay attention, they may actually start to change what they eat, because they are used to what they're used to eating actually doesn't end up tasting as good anymore as they are used to. So especially with junk food or overly processed food, as some people practice mindful eating, those foods will become ruined for them because they begin to taste the chemicals in the food or the overly sugared or salted way that the food is produced. So another thing that many people have difficulty wrapping their minds around is that you can throw away food. So especially people who have learned to clean their plates. So it's really no more wasteful to throw food into your stomach that it doesn't need than it is into the garbage. So if you don't like something, it doesn't taste as good anymore, it's junk food, eating it just because you have to clean the plate is not helpful. You can throw it out. All right. So final step, just on the previous slide, yeah, perfect. Final step is really the best part. So savoring your food. So enjoying it with friends, family, thinking about the memories it evokes, the nostalgia, knowing that, you know, actually enjoying it with friends and family is good for you, as Dr. Sohaib mentioned. So if you're able to adopt those first 4 steps and first 4 tips that I mentioned, then you can really start enjoying your food in a different way and not viewing it as your enemy or having that love-hate relationship with it. Food is something that I mentioned you can really experience pleasure from at least 3 times per day. So it's something that you can look forward to throughout your day. So when you savor your food, you're bringing all your attention to rest on the complete range of sensations in each bite. So if you really like it, you can eat it, and if you don't have to. So think about this. If you don't really enjoy your food, then why are you eating it? So acknowledge your responses to your food likes and dislikes without judgment. Just because you don't like something, that's fine. And if you do like something, then of course, enjoy it and eat it. So again, you'll be amazed at the types of food that you end up gravitating towards compared to what you do now. And those healthy options may actually start becoming more of the norm, and junk food may start becoming slightly less attractive to you. I know there's a question here around that notion of cleaning your plate is very ingrained in terms of the societal aspect, and that it's, you know, polite, and of course that is definitely you know, both societal and a cultural element. So sometimes even practicing taking smaller portions, using smaller plates, smaller utensils, and if you do have to clean your plate because it is the polite thing to do, then try to at least ask, you know, the host to give you a smaller plate, or worst case scenario, maybe you can take it to go. But just allowing yourself to set that boundary for yourself and make the right decision for yourself is very important. All right, and then on a final note, you will occasionally slip and give in to emotional eating, indulging, or eating while distracted. And in those cases, it's fine. So self-forgiveness, self-compassion are so important. So don't view a slip or even a few instances of indulgence as failure. You know, humans are not perfect. Allow yourself to soften that notion that you can only do something if you do it perfectly. Practice mindful eating whenever you can, and eventually you can hope that it does become a habit. It really does take time and effort and practice to master mindfulness. So just be patient with yourself. Self-compassion can also help you manage those feelings of guilt and failure associated with overindulging. And next, also just understand that there is no right or wrong way to eat. So each individual's experience is very unique. So don't fall prey to those shoulds in your head. Rather, pay attention to your internal body cues and that tell you what's right for you. It may not be the same thing that's right for, you know, your family member, your partner. So really just pay attention for what is right for you. You don't have to eat just because it's breakfast. You don't have to eat just because it's lunchtime. Tune into your body and allow your body to dictate the best time to eat. And finally, learn your emotional triggers. So who hasn't reached for their favorite snack to make themselves, you know, feel better? Of course, everyone has. So emotional eating is really a way to distract yourself from those uncomfortable feelings, such as boredom, loneliness, anxiety, or grief, especially in these times that we're experiencing during the pandemic. So learning what triggers your emotional eating can really help you make the choice to cope with your emotions in another way and help you self-regulate. So it could be engaging in a deep breathing exercise or meditation or taking a bath, a nap, maybe just watching a movie, going for a run. You know, even if you want to indulge in your favorite snack, just do it by taking a smaller portion. Maybe take a bite, put it down, see if you still want it. So that concludes really the educational component of today's webinar. Thank you so much for participating. And I know we're approaching the lunch hour here in Toronto, so I do invite you to practice what you've learned here as you eat your lunch. And if you have any
I found this
questions,
so informative.
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying this was amazing. Even I learned a lot from this as I approach my lunchtime.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear.
Yeah, and sticking to it, right? And having that persistence that, you know, not just today's lunch, but today's supper and tomorrow's breakfast, all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Try and, again, we have time, thankfully, these days. And so, again, trying to make this a regular habit, or at least giving it a try, or being mindful of it, can go a long way in the long term, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
And I think what really hit home for me is exactly what you called like the quarantine 15 and the freshman 15. I mean, we all laughed. Obviously, it's quite funny, but there's a lot of truth to it. And I think, you know, it's just like when there's these periods of change and we have to adapt to like something so new and so unfamiliar. You know, there's just a lot of things that kind of innately come back to us in terms of like patterns of our past and how we relate to food. So I personally found that, you know, a really strong takeaway. And I know a lot of people, you know, just even in my own clients and, you know, just from the things that people have asked us, like they've been asking us, our community's been asking us to do a talk like this for quite some time now. So I think this was, you know, extremely powerful and important. You guys answered a lot of questions along the way. Annetta, did you find anything else that you wanted to address, or otherwise I was just going to kind of wrap up and tell people how they can get a hold of you and Dr. Saheb for further questions if they have it?
I think there was one question we may not have addressed, and it's around one of the members are asking, sugar gives me a lot of energy, but I know it's not good for me, so I can't really find healthy foods that give me energy. Please help. So what is a recommendation around, you know, if sugar is the thing that really you find really gives you energy, what can you do? So maybe Dr. Sohaib can chime in there.
Happy to. Again, a very, very common question, right? And so sugar obviously can be addictive, right? And obviously it's one of the highest content in terms of those foods that we reach for comfort. But there is a difference between processed sugar and natural sources of sugar. And so I would say, look, if you find yourself having a sweet tooth, or really sugar is the thing that gives you that energy, look for natural sources, right? Because the actual sugar content is going to be so much lower and healthier for you, but still, you know, plentiful in especially fruits. And so, you know, having a wide assortment of fruits, especially coming into spring, you know, there's lots of different fruits that are now going to be in season. And so, you know, again, applying that mindfulness to the eating, you know, tasting the strawberry, looking at the strawberry, comparing that to the difference of an apple or a banana. You know, you can actually find a lot of joy in that. And taking that time to allow your body to register that energy is gonna go a long way. The other thing is anything with carbohydrates. So anything made of flours or grains actually does have quite a bit of sugar in it. And eating things that are multigrain or whole wheat, you know, those sugars are what we call complex carbohydrates. And so those whole wheat or whole grain or brown sources of carbs compared to white flour, that sort of thing, is released on a much slower scale. When you eat something like white bread compared to brown bread, the white bread spikes the amount of sugar that goes out, and then your body releases a ton of insulin, and that sugar level crashes down, right? Compared to something that's made of whole grain that will go up very slowly, peak over a few hours, and then gradually come down, which is not going to give you that same sensation of instant hunger and contribute to emotions and all these kinds.
Awesome, thank you. And there's one more question, and it's around intermittent fasting. So do you recommend intermittent fasting, and can it be combined with this method of mindful eating?
Absolutely. And so intermittent fasting, as long as you're doing it appropriately, and there's lots of really great resources, by all means, you know, you can always get in touch with one of the docs if you are looking for more specific information on it. But yes, as a general rule, intermittent fasting, really, really good in terms of lots of benefits. So benefits for your health, benefits for your mood, concentration, all these kinds of things. So good evidence around that. And I would say, you know, it gives you the opportunity to allow yourself to be hungry. And when you combine that physical hunger with the practice of mindful eating, you know, I have no doubt that you're going to feel so much more satisfied and rediscover that joy of eating when you combine these two sorts of things. But again, the most important thing is you're doing that in a safe way. And so again, you're looking for evidence-based ways to go about that. Just have a chat with any of our docs, and we're really easily available, right?
And I think type yes in the chat box if you guys want us to bring on board a registered dietitian. I mean, I think you know, I think this is a very this is definitely a very you know, timely presentation in terms of all the things that we're talking about. And it's so hard to not step away from like, hey, what other food sources should we have and what else should we do? And I think, you know, there's just so much advice out there and everyone's so unique. So yeah, we're getting a lot of yeses. Okay, so maybe that's something we should consider. You know, it's so interesting. So guys, I know, you know, there's so much information out there. I think these guys did a phenomenal job. Honestly, I found this so engaging and thorough. I really myself found so much value in this presentation. So thank you. Now, for those of you who continue to have a lot of questions about the presentation and just in general, just take us to the next slide. We do have a lot of sessions available virtually right now, obviously, just given light of what's going on. Psychotherapy services are something that has actually, you know, worked out quite well with our technology. You know, we have really seamless abilities to connect with you over similar platforms like Zoom that are just one click and enter into the portal. Aneta is actually taking patients right now and does see a lot of patients, and this is a pressing topic that she covers in her practice. So if you have additional questions and you want to just even ask her some questions, she does do complimentary meet and greet, so feel free to schedule an appointment just to chat with her about what that could look like for you. And otherwise, you know, as a student, she does have reduced rates as well, so that is something that you can look into to see if it's right for you. And if you have more pressing medical questions or things that are related specifically to your diet itself, Dr. Saheb, awesome, you know, wealth of information and knowledge that he can provide you in terms of nutritional counseling and guidance, even just direction if you do need, you know, more assistance in the realm of a dietitian or whatnot. He will be able to help you on that front. And in terms of our upcoming webinars, we do have a few more lined up. So tomorrow, again, just working from home, I need to come up with a cool thing now. You came up with the quarantine 15. I need to come up with like injury quarantine something. But we're seeing a lot of repetitive strain injuries. We're seeing a lot of things creeping up. So that's why we're kind of putting on a lot of things for your body to feel right. That's why I was so happy that we broke this up today and had something just about our diet and our mindfulness. But tomorrow, we're getting back into our bodies again with repetitive strain injuries. And then on, I believe, Monday, we're going to be doing something called Calm Mind, Clear Intention with Andrea Lee. She's one of our osteopaths, and she's going to guide us through a lot of great tools and tactics to sort of help us kind of also, you know, going hand in hand with what we talked about today. So until tomorrow, thank you to everyone once again in our community. If you guys need anything, our offices are working around the clock virtually. So you can email us, you can call us. We're always around. If you just have any simple questions, let us know. And yes, the recording of today's webinar will be posted for you. So you'll definitely be able to access this information if you have to dip out. And like everyone just talked about, especially Aneta, choose your lunch wisely, think about your lunch, make conscious decisions, and everything else that we took away from today. I know I'm going to really look at my plate today when I eat my lunch and really think about my food and my intention and how it makes me feel, instead of like, oh my God, I have another webinar. I got to eat my lunch in 2 seconds. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Doctor. It was great to have you on, and we'll see you all soon. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.